Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nerdcast. We are about to pick the field of 64. I'm here with Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt, and we're going to go through, pick the 16 host sites. We're going to pick the at-larges, pick the automatics. We're going to try to seed them all. We're going to go through this, and keep in mind, I say this every week, but we are going to do some projecting. Some of that is, we still have 4 weeks left plus conference tournaments. So some of this is getting pretty stable, and some of it we've still got to project because there's still some huge series left to play. So let's get started, guys. With the top overall seed, I think it's, every week it's Texas A&M or Arkansas right now. Any kind of thoughts? We went with A&M last week. Anything happened to change your mind?
No.
Status quo.
Okay.
And status quo too.
So I'm going to we're going to share this sheet, and you can follow along on the video show, and we're going to have.
Yeah.
There we go.
I will say too, as I put this up, it is worth noting. I mean, I would advocate for no change here, but it is worth noting that Arkansas does have 4 more quad 1 wins than A&M, and they have they have 2 more Q1 plus Q2 wins than A&M with a better non-conference schedule. So there is actually a case being made for Arkansas,
and they're a game ahead in the standings. And I think I made the case. I think last week I argued for Arkansas for one.
Yeah.
I lost that argument. So I just assume you guys would keep status quo. But I mean,
I'm good with status quo. I'm just throwing it out there just so people just don't think we're just ignoring it completely.
Yeah.
I still think as we project, I still like A&M to win that head-to-head at home, and I think ultimately that's what's going to matter.
Yeah, they were so impressive, at Alabama offensively. Now, they didn't pitch as well because some of that was Alabama, who's really good at home.
Yeah.
But Arkansas handled Alabama's offense pretty well. Even though Alabama won the series, it wasn't, a slugfest like what A&M saw. So it's a little bit different. Two teams with corresponding strengths, right? So you're going to see Arkansas's pitching against A&M's hitting. That's going to be a blast when they play.
Yeah,
but
I say it again because I just think it's worth noting. I just want to keep making sure I got this on the record. Arkansas's pitching is so much better than everybody else, and I know last week A&M was second in the country in ERA. Now A&M is 5th. Arkansas 2.92 ERA. A&M, which is the next best Power 5 ERA, 3.62. It's very comparable to the way that Wake Forest dominated last year and wound up being the number 1 national seed. I'm just saying, I think everyone hits, even Arkansas. I know they're not an elite offense the way that A&M is, but they hit fine. But if you got the elite pitching, that's the separator, period.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The question I would have is, you saw what happened to Wake when they got to Omaha, and everybody's got a dude, right? So you got to be able to score, and that's the differentiator for me. I think if A&M is bridging that gap, so it's not just a mismatch, and maybe it still is. I don't know. We have to see.
With that said, so digging into SEC only statistics, I think this is the best measuring stick, not necessarily, that some of these teams play in non-conference. A&M or Arkansas on the pitching side, 3.21 ERA, A&M 4.81. So decent separation there. A&M, this is pretty startling actually. A&M 300 as a team, Arkansas 238.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And A&M also has double the number of home runs in Arkansas offensively.
Arkansas, to use a metric that I prefer over batting average, OPS. Arkansas just 769 OPS in conference play, which is 11th in the league. A&M is 3rd. So there is a discrepancy there. That said,
it's close.
It's not that close between the offense. A&M's offense is much better, but I'm just saying
overall.
Yeah. And I'm going to push back just a little bit on Mark's comment there about look what happened to Wake Forest and Omaha last year. I mean, look what happened. They were 1 win from the finals. They lost 11 innings against the best pitcher in his generation, right?
They couldn't score. That's why they didn't win.
They were playing against the best pitcher of their generation, and they still were.
That was one game.
Mark, you know better than to go with Aaron about Wake, bro.
I'm just saying, like, let's
I'm
not
not-
Hey,
let's not
I've got a
pretend Wake,
Northeastern take queued up too.
let's not pretend Wake Forest like couldn't score last year. They were also an elite offensive
Well,
team.
they were great
Yeah.
until Omaha, right? I agree.
They did struggle a little, and part of that was Kurtz not being healthy. But anyway, that's been litigated. Let's move on.
Okay. So next up would be, a group of teams: Tennessee, Kentucky, Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State. Where do you guys land with that group?
So last week we went Clemson, Kentucky,
Clemson,
Florida State,
Kentucky,
Tennessee.
FSU, Tennessee in that order.
Yeah. And so I would say that what has changed since last week? Well, Tennessee won a road series at Kentucky. That has
Yep.
my attention.
Mhm.
Kentucky's still 3 games ahead of Tennessee in the standings. Obviously, they haven't played the same schedule, so that's
Mhm.
the head-to-head metric in Lexington maybe offsets that. Kentucky's still
Right.
a couple spots ahead in the RPI. Kentucky's still 13-2 against Q1, which is wild. Tennessee 10-7. Clemson though 10-1 against Q1 and still kind of in the ACC catbird seat. I think I leave Clemson number 3, guys.
Yeah, I think I lean Clemson, Tennessee, Kentucky.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
the 7-1 top 25 for Clemson. I mean, that's
Pretty loud.
really good. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So then go with Tennessee and Kentucky next.
I do. I think
use the tiebreaker.
As of right now, I mean, they won a road series. Granted, it was very even, but they did win a road series.
You good with that, Aaron?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So then, the candidates, we had Oregon State in the mix. They did not have a good weekend. And then you've got some ACC teams, and I think you'd have to include Wake in this conversation as well. And then you'd have East Carolina kind of hovering in that mix.
Yeah,
as well.
East Carolina would definitely be in for me this week, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 19 non-conference in the schedule. They're 8 in the RPI, 11-4 in league, 31-8 overall. I mean, I get their metrics at Q1 to Q2 aren't going to size up with the SEC or ACC, but I mean, they never do. So,
right.
But they have the head-to-head against North Carolina on top of that.
Yeah, and it's just 4-1 top 50. That's really the knock, and the fact that if you forecast forward, there's not going to be a lot of opportunities for them to get more high-end wins. But they continue to take care of business. They're 31-8. They're really good. They have the head-to-head over UNC, like you said. Yeah, I mean, so did we have them just outside the top 8 last week, like number 9?
Yeah, we had them at number 9. If you go to my
here's
column
last week
this morning, I have it listed out.
I see it there. Yeah, okay. I would agree. I would also have them in.
I would have FSU. My hunch here, guys, would be ECU, FSU, Wake in some particular order.
And it's worth noting, like, is kind of perplexing as North Carolina's resume is, because they have 4 series losses out of 10 weekends. They haven't been swept, and they've done really well in non-conference. And so, and they're still 15-6 in the ACC. So they're still propped up way up there in the RPI, and 15-6 ACC is still pretty loud.
Sure is.
Especially compared to Florida State at 11-7. And so I don't quite know how to reconcile all those things, but I just think we can't.
Or Wake at 11-10.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's, has a big difference, 4-game difference. And North Carolina swept the head-to-head in Winston-Salem. So I still would have them ahead of Wake
That's
Forest.
true. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, maybe we go Florida State, ECU, North Carolina in that order. Or Mark, is there somebody else you want to bring into discussion here? Oregon State would be out for me.
Yeah.
Oregon State's 15. I mean, 5-7 against Q1, Q2 totals.
If you're going to be, outside that top 10 in the RPI, you're not going to be a top 8 unless you have something really, really great to offset it. Yeah. And I mean, are they even leading the Pac-12 right now?
No, Arizona is.
Yeah, so it's
not a game and a half.
Yeah, there's not enough non-conference to boost it up. I think they're still a host, but I don't think they're a top 8.
So guys, it looks to me like we've got nine teams for 8 spots.
Yeah, I think I go East Carolina, North Carolina, Florida State for the next 3.
I'm good in any of that order, any of those orders right there.
Again, ECU has the head over UNC, and UNC has the better conference record than Florida State. And so that's kind of how I still look at Florida State's resume and think, what have they? again, looking for high-end wins, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what we look for. Who are theirs? I mean, and they don't have, to me, still a series win against a regional team. Period.
Yeah. The team out of all these clubs, even looking under the top 25 in the RPI, the team that they could be hitting themselves in the head at the end of the year is Duke. I mean, they've done a great job in the ACC, but their non-conference season schedule is 238, and that's why they're 21st in the RPI.
Yeah,
238 or 238 NCSOS for Duke, and they're 21.
And that's despite opening the season with a good weekend where you're down at Coastal Carolina, you're playing Indiana, you're playing George Mason, who was in regional last year. Like you would think that's a great weekend, and then you've got some midweeks like Liberty, a team you schedule thinking that's a good RPI weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like no, like Liberty's having a bad year, and so that hurts them. But you're right. I mean, it's that metric is just inescapable for them. And so I think Akron 9-30, 3 games, like that again takes a disproportionate impact. Northwestern 12-23, like you play teams with bad records, it just plain drags you down.
Well, the other thing I will say this for Duke, since we're just talking about teams that can potentially get in the top 8 mix, Duke does have FSU this weekend. They actually go to East Carolina for one more midweek game. They go to Georgia Tech, who we'll end up discussing those guys a little later in the podcast. And then they have North Carolina at home. So, I mean, the opportunities are there to kind of erase this deficit, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Curious where Duke is real quickly in the DSR. It's I think a better reflection of the season they've had. They're number 12 in the DSR, whereas they are, what did we say, 21 in the RPI. And so, yeah, I mean, that to me is just a better. And I want to make sure we continue to like check in on the DSR, because in cases like this, where it's like, this is one of the flaws of the RPI that I rail about every year, is that you have one weekend against Akron and it just has a disproportionate impact on your season. Whereas the DSR doesn't really punish you that way. And so again, 12 feels much more realistic than 21 for Duke with the season that they've had.
Would agree. So we thinking North Carolina here for 7? Is that where we're landing?
I think so. I think North Carolina.
Yeah, Denver, FSU, whatever order you want.
That's where my head is. Yeah.
And interestingly, again, just speaking of DSR, those two teams are back to back in both RPI and DSR in the same order. Florida State 1 spot ahead, but they've had both of them had interesting seasons, because North Carolina's got more series losses, but they've also got better series wins. So
yeah. How do we feel about FSU versus Wake?
Yeah, I mean, Wake did just win the head-to-head, but it was a hard-fought series. It was in Winston. Kind of feels like a status quo weekend there. I feel like Wake is trending well.
I mean, honestly, might have them back-to-back. My issue with Wake for now is just being one game over 500 in conference.
But it's, coming from a spot where they're 4-8 a couple weeks ago, and now they're 11-10. That just kind of shows you it's up arrow, and they did just win the head-to-head. You make a good. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because you're right. Maybe I think they have probably the better high-end wins also than Florida State. I think including the one against Florida State just this past weekend, which is certainly better than Florida State's done. So actually, yeah, I think I might have Wake ahead of Florida State.
Okay,
let's do it.
I won't argue with it.
And then FSU at 9.
I think so.
So then the next group, you would have Oregon State. Somewhere in here, you would have Duke, Virginia, perhaps in this group.
I would still have Duke in, yes.
Yep.
You would have Oklahoma somewhere in this.
Yeah,
group.
Oklahoma would definitely need to be in there, even at 22 in the RPI. I mean, they're leading the Big 12 by 3 games
for sure.
Maybe Coastal.
Yep.
Yeah, Coastal. So Coastal was like kind of in that 19 to 21 range last week. They get the series win over Louisiana over the weekend, and they're up to 13 in the RPI. With, by the way, the number 3 non-conference strength of schedule. So strong schedule for Gary Gilmore and company.
They do such a great job with their midweek stuff there. Making all these trips up to play North Carolina and Wake Forest, and they just do a really. That's really helped their non-conference for sure. You see Santa Barbara, I'm going to throw in the mix, 12 RPI. They're now 11-4 in the Big West, which is tied with Irvine. Irvine, though, is 26 in the RPI. So even though Irvine has the head-to-head there, Neither, in both cases, their only Q1 games are against each other.
Right.
So that's kind of the knock, but I would put them in the discussion. You mentioned Indiana State, and I saw you added to the sheet.
Right.
I agree with that.
Is there any other host contenders?
Vanderbilt, I see you added to the sheet
South
as
Carolina,
well.
perhaps?
Yes, I would put South Carolina on the sheet. Yep. 9-9 in the league now, 14 RPI. It's
I mean, you could throw Nebraska on there just at least for discussion's sake. I mean, they are 19 in the RPI, 8-4 in the Big Ten, 13 Q1, Q2 wins total. Not bad.
Okay.
Still have some work to do, in my opinion. But
anybody else in the Big 12?
You could, yeah. I mean, Oklahoma State could still be in the discussion, even at 25. Potentially.
Yeah, but I think that would be probably the first team we cut here, just based on.
Yeah. And DBU, just for discussion's sake, DBU 17, but I don't think. I mean,
no,
they're 7-5 in
not doing well enough
competition.
in league. Yeah.
No, they've lost 3 straight series. They're trending the wrong direction.
Georgia. I mean, if you're gonna have South Carolina on there, you can have Georgia on there. 9-9, also in the league, 3 spots better than South Carolina in the RPI.
Yep.
So for me, just kind of looking at these teams, I mean, the ones I would have the most confidence in right now to host would be Indiana State, Coastal, Oregon State, Oklahoma,
and Duke for me.
Yeah, and Duke. Mark, what do you think about that?
Well, I think Indiana State's in really good spot right now.
Yeah,
I think they're going to continue to win, and if the RPI hangs around anywhere near where it is, they're going to be one of these teams. Maybe not 10, but they're going to be one of these teams. Coastal's in a good spot. If Sunbelt is a good league this year, it's probably the best it's ever been. And I do think that's going to get rewarded if there's a candidate anywhere near, right?
Yeah.
They've got to meet that minimum threshold, but if they do, they're in.
And Mark, who's the committee chairman this year? Coastal Carolina's Matt Hogue.
You think that matters, man?
For the record, Coastal is tied for a 3-way tie for second place in that league with Troy and Southern Miss. All of them are 11-7, 4 games behind Louisiana at 15-3.
Who they just took the series from.
Right. Yep. But it definitely feels like the cream has risen to the top in that league with James Madison, number 5. They're tied with Georgia State. Anyway, so yeah, we'll see how the rest of it plays out. But I mean, if Coastal winds up, let's say, 4th in the standings, because right now they're in a 3-way tie, right, for second. If they wind up at the bottom of that pack, I don't think they host, even if the RPI is good. But
maybe,
but I like
who the other candidates are, right? Yeah.
But I mean, I like their chances. I would agree with you. I'd have them in Indiana State in. I would have Oregon State in and Duke.
For me, I still think Oregon State's going to get there by the end.
Yep.
And probably win that league. Do we want to list Arizona here?
Yeah, Arizona
needs to be in that mix. They're what,
absolutely.
32 with a bullet.
Yeah, I mean they won't be a host at 32, but
they need to be in the discussion,
though, right?
Yep.
So
especially if they win the pack, guys. If they win the pack, and let's say they're in the, let's say they're 26 and they win the pack, they got a real shot.
Yeah. Agree. So do we project that to happen?
I mean, I kind of, at this point, I kind of like Arizona's chances. Personally, I mean, I like their team anyway, and they've been trending. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They had a rough start against a tricky non-conference, and then they found it, and it's like they have a 2-game lead now over Oregon and Utah, 2.5 over Oregon State. I mean, I like Arizona's chances.
Yeah. Well, there's non-conference strength of schedule is really good. I think it was 4, I think, when I looked at it yesterday. So it's, that's the kind of thing that gets rewarded. But for them, since the RPI is likely not going to be in that top 20 range, you got to win the league. So
just real quickly looking at the RPI needs report here for Arizona over at boydsworld.com. To get into the top 16 in the RPI, they have to win 14 of their last 15. So that's not going to happen. That's heading into the conference tournament, mind you. They could get another boost in the conference tournament. But More likely, yes. I would say a finish like with a good finish in down the stretch, they probably are in that 20 to 25 range.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 18 to 22, call it.
Okay.
But again, if they win the league, I think that'll be enough.
All right. I mean, not at 10, but they
Right,
would be
right.
in one of these spots. I agree.
Yep.
So
So
who do you
let's-
like the best out of this group? Indiana State's probably the safest pick because I think they're going to keep winning. Coastal.
Yeah, let's go Indiana State here.
Oklahoma for sure. I mean, Oklahoma's in a better league by far than Arizona. And
Yeah.
they've got a 22 RPI, and they've got a 3-game lead in conference.
Yeah, definitely got them ahead of Arizona, no question. I mean, you could put them here. I mean, at 10 if you want, or 11, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Kendall, where do you come down to Oklahoma versus Indiana State?
I'm good with that.
Oklahoma, then Indiana State. Okay.
Yep. OU, by the way, 11th ranked non-conference sheets of schedule.
Okay. So we have 5 more spots. So among those, I think
Coastal will be one for me for sure.
Is going to get one, and I think. I don't know if it's 12, but they're going to get one.
Yeah, Coastal will be in somewhere. I still feel pretty confident about Vanderbilt. Like I feel more confident about Vanderbilt than I do about South Carolina.
I do too.
Okay. Yep. We could put Vanderbilt 12. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're 10-8 in the league with 18 RPI. 1 game ahead of Georgia and South Carolina. A few spots behind them in the RPI, but also I think we just probably believe in their arms a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But one knock on Vandy though, just 3-7 against Q1 guys.
They're not good on the road.
Yeah,
I mean they've been really dominant at home, but they're struggling away from Nashville.
Yeah, it's let's see, road record. The road record also 3-7. Does that sound right?
Yeah, they really haven't played a lot away from home. They had the neutral site tournament.
So 3-7 on the road and 3-7 against top 25 or against Q1 rather. To me, those things are actually problematic, especially when you compare them to, again, their peers in the SEC, South Carolina and Georgia. South Carolina's 10-11 against Q1 compared to 3-7. Georgia's 7-8 against Q1. That gives me some pause right there. We do have a head-to-head result, of course, between Vanderbilt and South Carolina swept Vandy, guys.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to backtrack on Vandy. I'm going to push back, and I'm going to lobby for them to be behind South Carolina.
But do you like South Carolina next?
Yeah, it feels a little rich.
Yeah, I think maybe Oregon State or
Coastal, Oregon State, Duke,
Coastal,
maybe my next 3.
Yeah.
I would say Coastal, Coastal, Oregon State, or I would actually say Oregon State, Coastal, Duke in that order. Personally,
I might have Duke.
I still believe in OSU.
I might have Duke ahead of Coastal. I might go Oregon State, Duke, Coastal.
Duke won that head-to-head early this year, right, on the weekend?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I mean, I think Duke's better than Coastal. I was just curious.
Okay, so the teams we have left for 2 spots: Georgia, Oak State, Arizona, Virginia, Vanderbilt, Santa Barbara, South Carolina, and Nebraska.
Yeah, and for me, it's South Carolina for one of those.
Yeah,
and then I might look at Virginia. Although that's a lot of ACC. Feels like a lot of ACC hosts, but we've got right now Clemson, North Carolina, Wake, Florida State, and Duke. So we've already got 5 ACC hosts. Maybe 6 is aggressive.
I don't know. You had 8 SEC last year.
Yeah.
I don't think they care.
That's true.
Well, if we're projecting Arizona to win the Pac-12, I would go there. If not, then no, absolutely not, because it's all about winning that league.
Yeah, that's a good point. I And again, I'm kind of sad now. I think I'm buying Arizona as winning the pack, but it's not a slam dunk.
Yeah, I'm good with Arizona. I mean, the thing about UVA is like if you look at the remaining schedule, they're at BC, NC State at home, Virginia Tech at home. The problem is they're really struggling on the mound right now, and I don't know if they're gonna win enough. They're scuffling.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
we think Arizona's going to win the pack. They're going to be within range.
I think so. I think I like Arizona.
Also gives a little more diversity.
Yep. I mean, I guess, again, you could talk about Santa Barbara just because of the RPI, but I just, I'm not feeling, I mean, a 2-1 Q1.
Well, what you do is you send UCS beat Arizona as the 2.
Yeah.
Give them the toughest RPI team.
Okay.
Well, good stuff. So that's our 16 hosts: Texas A&M, Arkansas, Clemson, Tennessee, Kentucky, East Carolina, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Florida State, Oklahoma, Indiana State, Oregon State, Duke, Coastal, South Carolina, and Arizona. So that's 16. Those teams will be playing at home. Go ahead and make your hotel reservations if you're fans of those teams, and send the bill to Kendall Rogers.
And if if you're trying to make your reservations for Lexington, good luck. From what I understand, that's a tough one to book.
Can be.
You can use the code Fabulous Rune Dogs at the Hilton, and I'll give you a 30% off.
Do they have that music festival that same weekend again in Lexington? Do we know? I think they do, don't they?
I don't know.
Anyway, I wonder if that would be an issue.
Yep.
June 1st and 2nd in Lexington. Yes, the Railbird Festival. So it's a great lineup. Yeah. I recall looking at the lineup. It's
the old famous Railbird Festival.
You got the Turnpike Troubadours. You got some Chris Stapleton. Counting Crows coming in strong.
Oh, wow! That is a hell of a lineup. Wow.
All right. So let's move on to the automatic bid part of this exercise, where we're going to go through all the conferences and decide who's the automatics and also who are the at-large contenders, and then we'll break those down to complete our field of 64. So, Aaron, where are we starting this week?
I think we start with the Bryan Athletic Conference, don't we?
Yes, we do. Let's start there. And, if you'll notice the sheet, some of these I just listed the conference because I wasn't quite sure where we were going to go. I did not do that for the Bryan Athletic Conference.
It's interesting because it used to be the Bryan Athletic Conference was also known as the NAC, but of course now they're in the America East. So if you're a long-time listener,
in the same conference.
That's right. So if you're a long-time listener and you're confused, we're talking about the America East. That's why we're starting up here with the Bryan Athletic Conference. Bryan 13-2 in the league, guys. 4.5 games ahead of UMBC. So there's your answer.
Okay.
The American boys, we had this is a one bid league last week with East Carolina, and that remains the case, I think. They're tied for first with UTSA, but UTSA is 86 in the RPI. If you're curious about the DSR ranking for UTSA rather, it is 51. So that's the team that
better.
If DSR was your preferred metric here, they would be way higher, and maybe that they deserve probably more of a look than they're getting based on the RPI.
They would,
but keep that in mind.
So then the A10, St. Louis again.
Yeah, the Billies 8-4, still in first place. Again, this is a one bid league. There's nobody within striking range in the RPI, but good with St. Louis there.
Then moving to the ACC, Clemson, the automatic, and then we got several teams to talk about.
Yeah. So last week we had, in addition to Clemson, we had Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, Wake Forest, NC State, Va Tech, and Boston College. All those teams, except Boston College, I think are safe. And certainly NC State continues to bolster its position. Keep an eye on NC State, by the way, in the hosting race, because they are 12-9 in the league, with 3 marquee series wins now: Clemson, North Carolina, and Duke head to head. If they can keep on, they got a tough series remaining their last 3 weekends. They're 29 in the RPI, but if they can win 2 of those last 3 series, let's say, get to 17 conference wins, that RPI will continue to go up, you would think. Keep an eye on them as a dark horse host candidate, but they get a lot of work to do still. Boston College, though, got swept by Notre Dame this weekend, guys. They're going to be dropping out this week.
Yeah, they are.
Georgia Tech can be discussed.
Yeah, they're up to 60. They're playing much better. They've just got a long way to go. I mean, that's the concern there. But they've got a tough schedule, which provides opportunities. And if you do that, then you can play your way in.
So right now, we've got Georgia Tech still wrong side of the bubble. Or should we put them on the sheet at this point? I would put them on the sheet. I mean, remember we had a soft bubble last week. I mean, they're 9-9 in the league with a 57 RPI, and they've got momentum.
Yeah, it's not as soft this week, but it's still classified as soft.
Yeah. And I think that's it. What about Louisville, guys? I mean, are they, again, it's still 84 RPI.
Yeah.
They're another team. Again, DSR sees them much differently. 42 in the DSR. So, I mean, which tells me they probably deserve a deeper look. However, it's 3-9 record against the top or Q1.
It's all the games against 200 plus. I mean, they played 11 games against those. Those are just killers.
Yeah, it's that, and the fact they're 3-9 against the Q1 teams. Like, it's not like they're beating good teams either. Like, if you've got a good high end of your resume and you're just dragged down by the low end, I'm much more sympathetic. Mm-hmm. But their high end of the resume is not there. I mean, they have the one sweep against NC State, which is nice, but that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so with an 84 RPI, I just think right now they're still off the sheet.
Yeah, I think they're light. Yeah. Okay, ASUN, are we still thinking Kennesaw?
I'm good with that. 53 RPI, 22-16, some high-end wins. Series win at Kentucky, by the way.
Yeah, the only team until this past weekend that had won a series at Kentucky. Kennesaw, 3-way tie currently for first place in the ASUN with Stetson and Jacksonville. Should Kennesaw State, I think, win the regular season and not win the conference tournament, they get a shot to steal a bid.
I would agree.
If they can keep that RPI roughly where it is or a little higher.
I mean, that Kentucky win is going to be loud, right? Because they didn't just win a game, they won a series.
Yeah. And they blew out Clemson in a single game.
Yeah, correct. So there's some proof of concept there.
Yeah.
Big 12.
But that's it. I'm sorry. As far as the ASUN for at-large candidates, that's it.
Okay. So we're going Oklahoma in the Big 12, right? As the automatic.
Yep.
And then teams that would be
West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, by the way, has made some gains in the RPI lately. They're up to 28 with a 12-9 league record. I would have Kansas State in. I would have UCF in. TCU, TCU at this point, guys, I would take out. I mean, they're 8-13 in the league. 41 RPI, but they're 8-13 in the league.
Yeah, but it's kind of similar to where they were last week when we did this exercise, right? Like since last week, they've lost one series to Texas, I guess. But I guess
7 in the last 10.
Yeah,
I don't know. They can be in the bubble, but I mean, boy, it's going to have to be a weak bubble for them to get in.
I mean, at this point, I think I like Georgia Tech's chances more than TCU's.
Yeah. So how do we feel about Texas? I mean, the good.
Yeah, well, I was just about to bring them up. 72 RPI, which is very problematic, and then 11-7 in the conference. You know what they remind me of, guys? They remind me of Kansas State last year.
Yeah.
RPI problem, decent league record, and didn't make it.
And this is another team, Texas, that the DSR likes way more than the RPI. They're 45 in the DSR.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas.
I would have them as my last team in. I would have them ahead of TCU, but as my second to last team in.
They've lost 9 games against 101 or lower.
Yeah.
And that's compared to the other teams in the field, that would be the most for any
Yikes.
at-large.
Yikes.
I mean, people have most of these. If you scan down through here, the most you see is 4. Here's a 5. That was the Raging Cajuns, and then we get to Texas. So anyway, so that's, if you wondered why the RPI is where it is, bingo.
Yeah.
So they're on the bubble, right?
Yeah, I mean, for now we can leave Texas. I would say for now leave Texas and TCU on the sheet, but they're both in precarious spots. So Oklahoma, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and UCF. I would say keep an eye on UCF because it's, the RPI is still good at 27 guys, but they're just 8 and 10 in the league, which is 10th place. I mean, that's a little problematic. UCF also, if you're curious, they're 24 in the DSR, so like that's not a artificially inflated RPI. It feels like. I mean, there's some good reasons for that, but anyway, they got to move up the standings, I think, to feel better about their chances.
Right. Agreed.
The Big East, there will be a change here. Yep.
Wow. We're
Connecticut
sharing the same brain.
Yeah, we're equally smart.
Yeah. Don't go calling yourself the Nerdmaster General now. Not that I really like that name, but hey, I'm stuck with me.
You're stuck with it, baby. Don't be a whiner.
It is interesting. Connecticut, they're one of those teams that almost kind of ran that classic Northern path, right? Where they started out a little slow. They're finally starting to play really well. They're up to 36 in the RPI, just 3-12 against Q1, but 7-2 in the league. And I think I feel pretty confident making those guys the auto bid.
Yeah, me too. They're in first place. They have the best RPI, and they have momentum, and they have pedigree. We like them heading into the year as a team to beat. Right. And they just, like Kendall said, a lot of Northern teams struggle early, and they find it. And UConn has done this many times.
So, point I want to bring up, because I mean, this could be a multi-bid league. I mean, not necessarily, guaranteed, but there's a shot here.
Yeah.
I mean, you have 3 other good candidates, Creighton, St. John's, and Xavier, and they've gone about it different ways. Xavier, their non-conference strength of schedule, 1. That is loud, even though, hey, you're 20-19 overall, but you're really trending in the right direction as you play teams, within your conference. That's RPI is what, 30 or so. So it's just one of those teams that the committee is going to value. Okay. Now, whether we're there this week, I don't know, but that's, keep that in mind as we're trying to break ties. How they like to do it, right? It's RPI, it's non-conference strength of schedule, and this team is going to be in great shape.
And so let's take a closer look at Xavier, the resume itself. So obviously they started the year at Clemson, got swept, but you strength of schedule likes when you play good teams, so they get credit for playing those games. Then they went to Lipscomb, who's 13-25. They took 2 out of 3. They went to Florida Gulf Coast, who's a 500 team. They took 2 out of 3. They split 2 midweeks at La Tech. They went to LSU and lost 2 out of 3. And LSU is not having a good year in the SEC, but it's still a SOS helper. They went to Indiana State. I'm sorry, they hosted Indiana State rather, and lost 2 out of 3. But obviously that's a good SOS helper. So it's like they've played a lot of good teams, but as far as quality series wins, there ain't none. UConn, they lost that series 2 out of 3 on the road, albeit they did win a series against Creighton, who's a bubble team. And Creighton's 28-9, and Xavier took 2 out of 3 there. So that's kind of the highlight of their resume. But I just don't see meat on the bone. This is one of those cases where you're right, like the metrics, the strength of schedule thing. We know that's something the committee likes, but like playing good teams isn't enough. It shouldn't be enough. You need to win games against good teams. And so, and here again, I'm gonna throw out the DSR here because I think it's a much better reflection of who Xavier is. They're 76 in the DSR, 30 in the RPI.
Because of the road bonus is not calculated the same. I mean, that's
right.
Xavier's getting a lot of RPI love from that. I guess the one comment I would have on that is there are a lot of teams that are going to be in this field who who really played no one in non-conference, or they played all their games at home. So I do think there should be some value to risking losing. And And I don't know that I would really hold that 30-29 against them, because they could have played, pick a team right now with a gaudy record, that schedule, and their record would be much better.
Sure.
Right. But they still wouldn't have any quality wins. I mean, anybody can lose to good teams.
Right.
But I do think that there's some value in, putting yourself at risk and going on the road and trying to win some games. And I do think that's what the committee values.
And that's fair. And the fact is that despite playing that, it is an admittedly rugged non-conference schedule. They're still above 500. They're 20-19. That's worth something. So, so I guess I'm talking myself. You made a good point there, Mark. I'm going to give them credit. I think we can add them to the sheet here as a bubble team. Creighton was in our field last week, guys. They're now 49th in the RPI and just 4-5 in the league. After this past weekend where they lost the series at Villanova. I would probably drop them out.
I'm with you there, man.
So for now, we're going to put Xavier in just as a bubble team and drop out Creighton. And Georgetown we had in last week as the AQ. I mean, they're 79 in the RPI after getting swept by UConn at home. They're out. And St. John's we had talked about last week. I mean, the Big East has a lot of interesting teams. St. John's 6-3 in the league, 65 RPI. I mean, they've it's out certainly right now, but they did win a series against Butler this past week. So, they're in the mix at least. We'll put it that way. But for now, let's go Xavier and UConn, and we'll come back to Xavier and we'll move along.
Okay. Big South. This is an upstate kind of day, isn't it?
Yeah. Upstate remains in first place, 12-3 in the league, one game ahead of High Point. Upstate also the only team in the league with an RPI on the side of the top 100. They're 75th. Going to be a one bid league, and Upstate remains the team to beat.
Okay. Next up, the Big Ten. So Nebraska would be your automatic.
Yeah, so that's what we projected. That's what we projected last week. It's worth noting Nebraska's 8-4 in the league. They're actually 2 games behind Illinois, but again, unbalanced schedules and all that. Nebraska is the one team that has a really strong at-large case with a number 19 RPI. But I think I'm still comfortable projecting them as the automatic.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, I may have jumped the gun. How do we feel about Illinois as the automatic versus Nebraska
or Michigan, who's Michigan actually in second place at 10-5. I guess percentage wise, they're tied with Nebraska. They're both 66.7%. But Michigan's below 500 overall at 20-12. So yeah, I'm fine with still projecting Nebraska as our AQ. Illinois needs to win a lot to get their RPI up in order to be an at-large team. They're 70 right now.
Rutgers 62. I mean, really, it's a one bid league otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rutgers is 12th in the league right now, though.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem, guys. They're 3-9 in the league.
They're 7 games out of first place.
I mean, I think here's the thing. I think if you believe that Illinois is going to win the league, which in the regular season, which they could because they're in a position of strength, maybe they get in with an RPI in the 50s to make this a 2-bid league. I would have Illinois as a bubble team right now, and that's probably it, guys.
Okay.
Yep.
And that would drop out Rutgers, who was in our field last week. Okay.
All right.
Big West,
Irvine, and Santa Barbara.
Who's change.
Who's the automatic?
I still go with Irvine. Still think they're the best team, and they have the head-to-head.
Okay.
We do have no conference tournament this year, right? It's next year the conference tournament starts?
Next year, yeah.
Yeah, I got to keep remembering that.
Okay. And then the CAA. I think we have a change here, don't we?
Yeah, last week we had Northeastern as our sole team. They did lose 2 out of 3 this past weekend against Wilmington. I would definitely put Wilmington now. Wilmington's tied with Charleston for first place. They're both 12-3. Northeastern 2 games back at 10-5. Definitely would make that change for the automatic. Wilmington would take over there.
than Northeastern, and as a potential bubble team. Although I'd probably have them in even at 42 or
Yeah, I
40
think
in the
so.
RPI.
I think so too, with a 40 RPI. And Charleston is in on the radar. It's another team, 64 in the RPI. DSR has them at 28. So another one where it's like feels like they're better than their RPI. And this is, I think, a really good use for the DSR guys. It's kind of like just a cross check.
Yeah.
You know, when we see a team where it's like, they're 12-3, they're 28-10 overall. Like, why aren't they better in the RPI? Well, let's see what the DSR thinks. And hey, like they're way higher in the DSR. I think that's a really good use. I think it's a really good use for that tool.
Makes sense. Well, Conference USA is interesting again. DBU, who we still like, but they're not looking like they're going to win that league.
Yeah, you're right. At least they're not in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Western Kentucky now, first place at 11-4. FIU sneaking up there, 10-5. Then you got La Tech at 8-4. You got Liberty at 9-6, and then finally you get to DBU at 7-5.
Right.
At this point, gosh, I mean, I still feel like DBU's the best team. I still would probably project them as the automatic qualifier just because I think they're the best team.
Yeah.
But you could also make the change here. Kendall, I see you about to maybe make this comment. Go ahead.
No, I'm actually good with DBU. Like they're 2.5 games back, but I mean that you can gain that ground up.
Well, and again, they don't have to win the regular season either. It's just like,
Right.
who do we think is going to win? Who do we think is going to win the conference tournament? And for me, I would just bet on the team that I think is the most talented, and I still think that's DBU. But then again, like they're 7-5, in their league, and Western Kentucky's 11-4, and so at some point you got to start maybe wondering if the team that we think is the best isn't maybe the best.
Yeah, I can't get so by the way, I can't get the DSR to pull up, but where is Western Kentucky in DSR? Because they're 82 in the RPI.
Yeah, they're 67 in DSR.
Okay.
DBU, by the way, 23 DSR. So it's in the same ballpark as their RPI, which is 17. La Tech is the other one that needs to be talked about here. They're 47 DSR. They are 56 RPI. They're surging. They just won a series at DBU. For me, I would probably go DBU as the automatic, just based on our stubbornness. And then La Tech probably, at least for now, is a bubble in. Okay. Western Kentucky is in first place. And so if you want to make an argument for them to be our projected automatic qualifier, I would listen. But their at-large case is still light with just an 82 RPI, and even the DSR also light.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with DBU as the automatic winning the conference tournament. I think certainly they have a talent advantage on everyone they play. It's just, do they perform?
They have the talent and the pedigree. I mean, just the history of that program.
Right. All right. So on to the Horizon.
Yeah, and we backed off last week of our beloved Norse. I think we flipped it to Wright State.
Yeah.
Since then, the Norse lost 2 out of 3 again to Oakland, but Wright State, what did they do this past weekend? They lost 2 out of 3 at Milwaukee. I would probably stick with Wright State, guys.
Okay.
Even though they're a game behind in the standings. Oakland also just a game behind, tied with Wright State. They're a game behind the Norse. So keep an eye on the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
But one bid league.
Yeah. Ivy League, still Columbia. There's not a whole lot else.
12-3, Columbia, 2 games up on Cornell.
Okay.
Mark, should we go to the MAAC?
Let's do that.
All right. We've got a tie at the top here with Niagara and Ryder, both 11-1 in the league.
Break that down for us, Aaron.
I will. I thought you would never ask. These two teams have not played this year.
They play this weekend.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they play this coming weekend. It's at Ryder, but whatever. It's all about the automatic.
That's a big home field advantage. Nobody rolls into sunny Pataro Field and pushes them around.
That's right. Exactly. It comes down to who we think is going to win the automatic. I mean, Ryder's got the track record. Ryder was in a regional last year.
I go with the Bronx.
But we had Niagara last week, and I don't know that I've seen anything to change that. I mean, they just went. They went up to Loudonville and won a tough series at Siena this past weekend. 2 out of 3. Siena 7-28, guys. Not that tough of a series, but Ryder, meanwhile, swept Chris Gennaro's Fighting Black Bears of Maine this past weekend. Maine 6-26, not a good year for the Gennaros. I mean, let's stick with the Purple Eagles for now, guys.
So who's next? So it's the MAAC. All right. Ooh.
Yeah, Bowling Green 17-1 in the league. 5 games up on Western Michigan. So incredible season for Bowling Green continues. They remain the pick.
Good deal. So next up, Missouri Valley.
We've already got the Sycamores in as a host.
Yep.
Last week we had UIC in also. I think they remain on the worksheet here, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
They won a series from Murray State, right?
They did. They took 2 out of 3 this past weekend from the Racers.
Who's also having a good year.
Yep. I think Kendall was saying they're 9-6 in the league with a 53 RPI. That is, puts them on the bubble.
2 in the last 10.
Yep.
Okay. So then Mountain West, and this one's kind of interesting because Fresno State was our pick last week. They were swept by San Jose State. San Jose State is jockeying right behind them with Air Force, who beat San Jose State earlier in a series. And Air Force hasn't played Fresno yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it's those 3 teams. Right?
Yeah, I still like Fresno. They're still in first place, a couple games ahead of Air Force, 3 games ahead of San Jose. They're still the only one of this bunch with a winning overall record, 25-14. I would stick with Fresno. Okay. But you're right. Like the fact that they got swept by San Jose State is a little bit of an eyebrow raiser there.
Yeah.
1 bid league.
Okay. And we move on to the NEC.
And
3-way tie. Heart, is who we've had. Is you feeling?
I'm good with Sacred Heart.
Feeling froggy?
They had a not great week. Lost to Delaware State on the road 2 out of 3. Before that, they lost 2 midweekers to Fordham and UMass. They lost another midweeker to Fairfield. It kind of feels like the wheels are falling off the Pioneers Express, whereas Long Island is surging, guys. Just took 2 out of 3 from Stonehill, swept Fairleigh Dickinson before that. They're currently up 8-1 on Kendall's Fighting Peacocks. Peacocks having a good year, by the way, 10-30, guys.
Yeah.
I noticed you guys
omitted like a decade's worth of wins.
I know it. Right?
Don't think I didn't notice you omitting them from the Metro Atlantic conversation.
Yeah, I apologize.
I'll remember that.
We'll work on that for next week.
So who are we going with for this sacred spot?
Wagner also is part of that 3-way tie.
I'm still okay with Sacred Heart given the fact they have the head-to-head over.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
The Sharks of Long Island, because we know about all those Sharks in Long Island.
They got Sharks up there. Yeah, listen, if we got Sharks off the coast of Cape Cod, which we certainly do, then I'm sure they got them off the coast of Long Island too, right?
Yeah, okay.
A true who could say situation. Let's move on.
So, the Pac-12. We have Arizona.
OVC.
Yeah, you skipped the Ohio
Put
Valley.
some respect on that name. Hashtag respect on that name.
My bad, guys. We're still thinking Little Rock?
Yeah, I still have, again.
In Little Rock.
Oh, look at this guy. Little Rock's still tied for first.
There's like a country song that talks about Little Rock. I'm trying to think of the name of it.
I don't know that one.
Rock.
What'd you say, Mark?
It's named Little Rock.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Probably.
Who sings it?
I was just being funny.
Oh, it actually is. It's Colin Ray. It's called Little Rock.
Yeah, see, sometimes I just catch these brainwaves.
You're the everlasting know-it-all.
People are learning a lot of the Nerdcast this week, guys. Sharks, Little Rock.
Yeah.
The lineup, the music lineup at the Lexington Music Festival. We learned all
There we
kinds
go.
of stuff. Little
Can we
Rock
please
is
talk about the Pac-12 now?
yes. Let's move on.
Arizona.
No, we're good. Move on.
Arizona, Oregon State.
Yeah.
I think California needs to come on the board as a discussion point.
How about
They're up
that?
to 48 in the RPI, 8-2 in their last 10. Just swept Oregon State at home. The only strike against them right now would be an 11-10 conference record, but certainly surging. And then after that, I mean, Oregon and Utah would be the two other teams. Aaron, what is Utah's DSR? Oregon and Oregon and DSR. Oregon's RPI is 62, Utah at 59. Obviously, I think Oregon's way better than the 62 RPI, but what does the DSR say about the Ducks?
DSR has Oregon at 53, Utah 52.
Okay, so close.
Utah 52, so we're back to back there.
I think I still have one of them in. I mean,
I would put them both on the sheet for now.
yeah,
All
for
three of
sure.
them.
And Cal,
Cal,
certainly.
Oregon, and Utah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Oregon's a weird one, man. Like, I don't know if you're the committee. Like, if you're the committee right now and they were second place in the pack with a 62 RPI, I don't know how you size that up.
Yeah. They begin.
Yeah.
I think they'd be in.
At this point, guys, are we making a change on the AQ here since we've got Arizona as a host? Are we projecting Arizona to win the automatic?
That was my whole deal. If they're going to,
Yeah,
they would have to win the league, I think, to host because their
Yep.
RPI is not going to be where it is. It's going to be high 20s. So you need something else.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean the tournament. But
Right.
That's
true,
where
I
my head
suppose.
was.
That's a good point. There's a conference tournament, so we don't necessarily have. We could still keep Oregon State as our projected AQ, which I'm fine with.
Which one do you want? I don't have a strong preference.
Yeah,
here.
let's keep Oregon State as our projected AQ. We still all believe they're the best team.
Okay.
Even though we're projecting Arizona to win the regular season, let's make that distinction. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got 5 teams in the pack on our sheet then: Arizona, Oregon State, Oregon, Utah, California, and that's all. It's worth noting Stanford here they have no shot in at large because it's a 116 RPI with a 9-9 conference record, but they're 69 in the DSR. So another team that's a significant gap there.
Okay. So next up is Patriot.
Army.
Yeah, until they get displaced, and they play Navy this weekend.
They're double day.
Yeah, it's currently close in the standings. Army's 12-6, Navy's 14-8. They both seem like viable candidates, but Army's won the league 4 years in a row, right? I mean, they're the choice. Yeah, they're the choice until they get knocked off.
So, the SEC.
So Kentucky, Tennessee, Vandy, Georgia, South Carolina,
A&M.
Arkansas, A&M, State, Mississippi State, Bama would all be in.
Yep.
Then it's worth talking about Florida.
We should talk about Mark's beloved Gators. According to Twitter, Mark loves the Gators.
Isn't your wife a Gators fan?
She is.
That's what I see. Exactly.
Yeah.
Happy wife is a happy life. Go Gators.
Yeah, and she doesn't even know, if a baseball is stuffed or
she's like, who the hell's Kevin
Sullivan?
Sullivan?
She don't know, right? Yeah. So anyway, the thing about Florida, I think, they're only a game over 500. They have 15 games left. Okay. 3 of them are midweek, and then they have their 4-weekend series, which are all difficult. If they go 8-7, including the midweek, so 5-7 in SEC play, and win all of their midweeks, which we all know is not a guaranteed thing. I think it's Stetson, it's FAU, and it's South Florida. So they could lose any of the 3. Okay. But if they win 8 of those, they're over 500 going to Hoover, and they would have 13 SEC wins, and they're getting in. If they don't do that, they've got a problem. So the question is, are they going to? Do you feel like they're going to be good enough to go 8-7 over these next 15, the 3 midweeks and the 4?
Yeah, and it's worth noting. So they have to play Tennessee and Kentucky, but they're both at home.
Mm-hmm.
at Georgia, which I think that's actually a winnable series for Florida.
Yeah, I would agree.
At Arkansas, I would not think
That's
is
a
winnable
problem.
series, but that's the only one. I think they win 3 of those 4. Well, they could win 3 of those 4 series. I mean, Tennessee and Kentucky are definitely better. They're better teams, but we've seen the SEC, the home field advantage thing is very, very real. Even, I know we don't think of Florida as like this lion's den, the way that some other SEC venues are, but it's still, we've seen that teams do a lot better at home than on the road in this league.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the question, right? Because certainly they're talented enough, but are they going to win enough to stay over 500 to even be eligible? And that's the and then there's Hoover, right? Because you want to be in a position where you don't go in, and lose 2, and that hurts you, right? So they're probably going to be in the play-in game. You win that, and then you play 2 more, and then if you lose those 2, you drop a game.
Mark, what was the other year where Florida was like 2 games over 500 or something overall and snuck into the field? It had happened.
Recently?
I think it was definitely in the last 10 years.
It was that year they went to Indiana and had like Magliozzi was like their Friday guy.
Yeah, it was not a particularly good showing in the postseason, if I recall. But
no, they went 1-2, but it was in Bloomington.
Look at Mark showing off his secret sheets for the world to see right now. This is amazing.
Was it here? I don't have the overall record. 2013, they were 14-16.
Yeah, that looks right.
But it was more recent than that.
I don't think they're getting to 14 wins.
13, yeah, here is. They were 33-24, went 13-17, but they had a 27 RPI, and they were a 3 seed.
Yeah, there you go.
That was probably what you're thinking.
You know what?
But the overall record was
no. I'm thinking of 2013 because they finished overall that year after going 0-2 in the regional. They finished 29-30 overall. So they were 29-28 in 2013, 14-16 in the league, and they got it.
So here's something I'll share. So I started doing the worst at-large overall records since the field expanded. And look at this one. Georgia went 31-30 in 2011, but they had an RPI number 16. They were above 500 in the conference. So then North Carolina, 27-25 a couple years ago, 3 years ago. RPI wasn't great, but their conference record was, aggregate conference record was fine. All right. So I think with Florida, it's going to be unique because they don't really fit that because they're going to have a losing conference record. They're going to have a not so great RPI. They're just going to be and a not great overall record, but they're going to pass the eye test and they're going to be really high on the advisory committee, I would assume, based on having arguably the best player in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. And you should add that 2013 Gators team to your list there, 29-28 heading into regionals. But it feels like if they can, as you said, if they can get to over 500 overall, they probably will find a way to get in, assuming the bubble stays soft, especially. I mean, I also think it's not out of the realm of possibility that they win 3 of the last 4 conference series and have really not a lot of problem getting in. But yeah, I would say for now, let's leave them on the sheet as a bubble team. I would lean bubble in compared to some of the other candidates here we'll talk about. But what about Ole Miss? I mean,
so I think the Ole Miss LSU series at the end of the season that's in Baton Rouge is going to basically be a play-in game to see who's still alive for to play their way in Hoover. Because I think the winner of that's going to probably end up with like 12 SEC wins. Be like 12 and 18-ish in that range. And Ole Miss is going to have the better RPI because they did more in non-conference. So they would actually be in better position, right, I think, in that spot. And, of course, I'm projecting. But I do think that LSU, with all of the momentum that they would have to come from so far back to get to that point, might also turn some heads should they get to that point.
Should they get to that point? Yeah. So we're looking at Ole Miss at 6-12 with a 24 RPI. LSU is 5 13, right, in the league with a
Yep.
39 RPI. So clearly Ole Miss is at this point just in a much more advantageous position. Now the remaining schedule for Ole Miss is Alabama at home. This is just your SEC weekends, mind you. Alabama at home, at Auburn, A&M at home, at LSU. They've also got midweekers against Southern Miss and Mississippi State in there. Not an easy remaining schedule, but I mean, theoretically, you'd think, all right, maybe they're favored to win at home against Bama. You probably would have to say, okay, they can win that series at Auburn because Auburn's just not having a good year. You probably would not be favored to win at home against A&M because A&M's right now number one team in the country, but still, it's a home series that gives them a chance. And then at LSU, I typically wouldn't like your chances to go into Baton Rouge and win a series, but so maybe they win half of those. Let's say that gets them to 12 wins. It feels wrong side of the bubbly to me, but
it does.
But it would put him in consideration.
Right, that they would go into Hoover with a chance.
Yep.
And that LSU's kind of in a similar spot, I think. But LSU's got to sweep somebody.
Yep.
And that's. And they've got Auburn this weekend, who's scuffling. They're not healthy, and that's a prime, candidate to kind of get back into this and make a push. Which I think we all feel like LSU has the capability to make a push. It's just how likely is it? Okay,
right.
And they've still got A&M, although it's at home, and they still go to Alabama, who plays really good at home, and then they've got that Ole Miss series we talked about. So not the worst series, compared to some of them that have been played, but not easy either.
I would have felt a lot better about LSU's chances if they had swept Missouri this past weekend.
That one game matters. It sure
does matter. Absolutely, it matters.
Which means now they've got to either take the series from Alabama or take the series from A&M, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously they got to win 3 out of 4 of those series and not get swept.
Yep, correct. So for me, I would just keep LSU off the sheet. They need to prove a lot more to me.
Agreed.
And Ole Miss too. I think at this point, like they're just too far back right now. I would keep them off the sheet, but they're on the radar, but off the sheet.
Gotcha. Yeah, that works for me. There's a lot of what ifs for both those teams to get there. We can evaluate them next week after we see what they do.
Yep.
Okay. SoCon, and that would be Samford.
Yep, remains the pick. They're 10-2 in the league, 2.5 games up on Wofford. Wofford does have a 54 RPI,
right?
With a 7-4 league record. Just 0-1 Q1. It feels like the same old with Wofford every year. We have this conversation. They're like hanging around in the 50s, and it's just like it's just not sustainable. We see it every year.
Right.
East Tennessee State
too many
also.
teams to pass. Right. Yeah, I added them as well. Yeah. The RPI's there. It's just, what else is there? Right.
Yeah.
And that's what they've got to overcome.
Yeah. It just
then with go ahead.
It's just a league that always winds up being a one bid league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I think even if Samford loses out on the automatic, I mean, they're not getting in either. So
no, they're currently 73 in the RPI, and the chances of them finishing like in the top 50, not very likely.
Well, they've got to beat. They play Alabama this week. They won a series. I won a midweek over Kentucky, so they've they can play. It's just the metrics aren't going to match up. In the Southland, do we still feel Lamar's the choice?
Yeah, Lamar.
Yep.
Lamar, although its RPI is down to 55. So if Lamar didn't win the conference tournament, that would be probably not getting in.
We'll start it with them as a 3 and see if they get bumped.
That RPI, by the way, down 13 spots from last week.
Ran into the Islander bus all over the weekend.
As one does. So now we go to the SWAC. And
Florida
not a lot of help here. You still feel Florida A&M?
I stick with the Rattlers. I think I just submitted my ballot this week for the Black College 9 poll, and I had Florida A&M number 1 on my ballot, so I'm going to stick with those guys.
Okay. Next up, oh gosh, it's the Summit. All right, Aaron's going to riff for about 10
abstain.
minutes. I'm going to take a break.
I abstain. You guys can talk about this one.
It's brutal, man. I still think it's North Dakota State, but it's really hard to not put Oral Roberts in there, and all they do is keep losing. So, I don't remember why we flipped to South Dakota State other than just the overall record last week for the Bison.
I mean, I guess.
Bison.
There's no good pick.
Yeah.
So basically,
ORU is now below Northern Colorado in RPI, by the way. Somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just flip a coin.
Bison is a flip, though. We had South Dakota State last week. Last week we had the fighting Jackrabbits.
Which Dakota State do we want? I'll just put one in there, and we'll just have a fill in the blank here. About that.
Let's go with let's go with North Dakota State.
Make that change.
They're really good in football, so
that's true.
Which is important.
I'm just kidding.
They did take 2 out of 3 from your 287th ranked Oral Roberts Golden Eagles this past weekend.
And
ORU though moved up 5 spots in the RPI, so good for them.
Yeah. I feel like ORU has, I feel like someone in ORU has wronged Aaron in another life.
It's just unfathomable.
It's perplexing. Yeah. So the Sun Belt, guys, let's talk about a good league here. So Coastal and Louisiana, which one should we call the automatic? Coastal, because they're the highest.
I guess. I mean, they're 4 games back, but I mean, we're looking at the conference tournament, so
right.
Yeah, let's just go Coastal.
Sure. Okay. So then the Cajuns.
Was Coastal?
I'll see this weekend, and I'm really excited about that. So,
who was our automatic last week? Does it say?
Coastal.
Okay.
Well, I can double check, but
just make sure on that one.
No, Louisiana was our automatic.
No, it was Louisiana. It sure was. Which one you want?
I mean, I'm fine with
Coastal. Just won the series.
Yeah,
so.
won the head-to-head.
Yeah. So Louisiana, I still have them as a 2. They might end up being a 3. We'll see. So Southern Miss, are they in or are they on the bubble?
Bubble.
Okay.
50 RPI, 11. So there's this 3-way tie we talked about earlier.
Right.
For second with Southern Miss, Troy, and Coastal all 11-7. Troy 71 RPI, so they're still off the list, but on the radar.
Right. We need to talk about James Madison too.
Yes.
Because they're 23
in the RPI.
With a 2 non-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah, and they swept Georgia Southern this past weekend, so they're now up to 10-8 in the league. I think we held them off last week because their record in conference wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're.
I think they're in the field at this point.
Yep, I would agree.
Okay. Anybody else this week? I mean, Troy.
No, I mean, I think Troy's
worthy, but their RPI is not going to allow it.
RPI. They're not getting in at 71.
Yep. Right.
Old Dominion 61, 9-9 in the league. Again, not getting in at 61. Georgia Southern 67, 9-9 in the league, not getting in. So.
Georgia State 10-8, 66, similar boat.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So then we move on to the WCC.
We still had Portland last week. Gonzaga took the series against Portland this past week. Gonzaga really surging, 12-3 now in the league. They had that rough start in non-conference, so they're just 16-20 overall. But I think it seems clear at this point that they're probably the team to beat, and so I would make that change and go with the Zags
as the automatic.
I would actually go San Diego. They're only a game back, and they have Gonzaga at home this weekend.
That's true.
31 RPI.
Yeah, I mean, certainly San Diego would be in as an
Yeah.
at large if we don't have the busy automatic. You could just make San Diego. The fact they have Gonzaga at home is helpful. San Diego did lose the head-to-head at Portland if we're looking for a common opponent, but and
I mean,
Gonzaga
doesn't Gonzaga still have a losing overall record?
yeah, so they would not be an at large. They would be. It's just a matter of whether we're projecting Gonzaga as the automatic or not.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we should go San Diego.
Gonzaga also has a series win against Arizona early. I'm sorry, no, that's San Diego. My bad. I was looking at the wrong schedule. Yeah, go with the Toreros. They won a series against Arizona, and they went to Texas and lost two. They played a great schedule. I went to Dallas Baptist, won a game. Texas won a game. Won a series at Michigan, who's having a good year now on the Big Ten. Yeah, I'm with you, Kendall.
Okay, good call.
So that would make this a one bid league, however, so it would lose a spot.
Okay, and then the WAC.
Yep.
Grand Canyon.
I think so. Yep. I mean, they're still tied with Cal Baptist there, but yeah, Grand Canyon 22-18 overall. They have the best RPI in the league at 107, 13-5 in conference. I still have the most faith in those guys.
Okay.
So, Mark, by my count, that gives us 67 teams for 64 spots.
Mm-hmm.
Some vulnerable candidates here to pick off: TCU, Xavier, Georgia Tech, UIC, Florida, Southern Miss, Texas. I mean, there's a lot of vulnerable teams, even Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who do we like the most here? I mean, certainly one of these Pac-12 teams is which one do you? I like Oregon the best here.
Yeah, I think Oregon. I mean, honestly, I think Oregon, Cal, and Utah all feel to me like I would have them higher in the pecking order than some others. Even though
agreed, 100%.
Yeah, I would have all three of those teams in.
I would take USC off. I don't think the third place Missouri Valley team with a 52 RPI is getting in. This seems problematic for me.
They're only one game behind.
0-3 against Q1.
That's true. They're only one game behind Evansville for second. It's worth noting. But you're right. Like, so their resume is predicated upon that they won a series early against Kansas, who for a while was hanging around. It's kind of fallen off. They played at Indiana State and got swept.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we could probably cut them this week.
So, but who do we like? Let's look at it from that perspective.
Okay.
So there's 6 spots left, and there's nine teams.
Yeah.
With of these, I mean, Texas has a winning record in the Big 12, but they have an RPI problem because they've lost to bad teams. What do you value, right?
Yeah.
You look at Florida. We went through their deal. Okay, it's they've got to win some games against some tough teams. They're capable, but will they?
I would probably project Florida to do it. I would probably keep them in.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. And plus, I'm a homer.
Of course, you love your Gators.
Yep.
I still like.
Miss.
Yeah, I'm fine with Southern Miss in. They have a history of finishing strong. They have a big weekend coming up this weekend, guys.
They do. That's a tough one.
At Louisiana, right?
Yep.
It is.
Illinois, I would again say is like a second team in the Big Ten, assuming that they win the regular season title there.
Yeah. Projecting, right?
Yep.
I'm with you. So then there's 3 spots left: Georgia Tech, Texas, TCU, Xavier, La Tech, and UIC.
La Tech in for me. based on, the fact they just went to DBU and won a series. It feels like they're maybe trending up. 56 RPI, not great for a team in the league like that, Conference USA, but in striking range. I don't know. I don't feel that convicted in this one, but I kind of like their chances.
Yeah. I would cut TCU and keep Texas in.
Yeah.
I don't like Texas RPI at all. But I mean, they're tied for second place in the Big 12.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what we talked about with Oregon, right?
Yeah.
Second place in the league. Or third place, whatever they are.
Yeah, TCU for me, 8-13, the Big 12, 11th place. I just don't think you're getting in.
So there's 2 spots left. Georgia Tech, Xavier, La Tech, and USC. So, Aaron, you like La Tech, right?
I think I like La Tech and Ja Tech.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at Georgia Tech here. So what's their schedule like? I remember looking at it before and thought, oh my goodness, that's tough.
So that started with, this past weekend they had to go to Virginia, a series we assumed that they would lose, and they did not.
Absolutely.
Right. They won 2 out of 3 at UVA, which was kind of changed the game for me with them. Week before that, they won 2 out of 3 against Virginia Tech at home. So they're surging. For that, they won a series at Pitt. So they've won 3 straight series. Now they've got Miami at home, favorable.
Yeah.
At Clemson, unfavorable.
Nope.
Duke at home. I mean, good team, but it's at home. And then you're at Florida State. So I would probably project them to, let's call it a 6-6 finish thereabouts, which would get them 15-15 in the league, right? They're 9-9 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I would think the RPI would go up in that instance.
Yeah, playing those teams is definitely going up.
Yeah. So the news report says if they win 8 of their last 15, they finish in the top 45. So I feel pretty good about that happening. I think that RPI is going to climb. I think they can go 6-6. I think they get in.
Okay. And that would basically, you like them more than TCU?
I do. Yes. I mean, again, the fact that they're in a much better spot in the standings and they're trending up, 2 high-end series wins back to back last 2 weeks. Yes. Definitely over TCU, definitely over La Tech also for me, and Texas.
Okay.
Probably even Illinois. Anyway.
Okay. So then our last 4 would be La Tech, Texas, Illinois, and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, Georgia Tech or Southern Miss for that spot. I don't know where you guys come down on that one.
Or Florida.
Yeah, or Florida. I think it's finally Georgia Tech there.
Okay. And then the next 4 would be Xavier, UIC, TCU, and Ole Miss. Or who else would it be? LSU.
Charleston could be in the mix.
Yeah.
St. John's on there twice. Ole Miss.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so that's our field. So that was fun. We went through the entire field. We decided who's going to host, what teams are going to play for it, and didn't really disagree a ton. There were some moments that are challenging, but the bubble is still soft. There's some teams that are in this field that probably aren't going to have room for with all the stolen bids and all that stuff that's going to happen. Any final thoughts from either of you guys?
Here are the teams that are. I guess my thought is this: still fluid. Week to week, we're going to have, I think, considerable changes this time of year. We added 5 teams now as at larges: Georgia Tech, Xavier, Illinois, La Tech, and James Madison. Replacing Boston College, Creighton, Rutgers, TCU, and the second team in the West Coast Conference. So Portland falls out because they were replaced as the automatic qualifier by USD. We made some changes to our AQ forecasts as well. I think we had 5 of those. So there's been some changes, but and that's I think what you can expect for the next couple of weeks. It's going to take a while for things to crystallize.
Yeah. My thought overall kind of goes back to the national seed discussion we had earlier in the pod. It's the fact that 5 to potentially 6 of the top 8 seeds. I mean, unless somebody collapses, they're kind of set in stone a little bit. Like those teams would have to lose those spots the final few weeks of the season, and also the bottom few 12 to 16 seeds are very fluid. I mean, you look at outside of the teams we had as top 16 seeds. NC State. Aaron talked about how they're surging, they're playing better. Virginia's in that mix. Oklahoma State's still right there. I mean, Oklahoma State still has some marquee wins. Texas Tech's climbing in the Big 12, Nebraska out of the Big 10, and then the 2 West Coast schools in UC Irvine and UCSB, and not to mention Georgia and Vanderbilt. So in essence, a lot at stake here from a host standpoint. That those bottom few spots are still very wide open.
Good stuff, guys. Anything else before we go?
I think that's it.
I think we're good.
NMG, I just want to thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
For once again a bang up job in the host chair. You're crushing it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So till next week, we'll join you again, and we'll do this whole exercise. One thing I will add is go ahead and rate us really high on whatever the podcast stuff. The other hosts say it. I have no idea how it works, but I think it helps. So if you like the show, tell a friend, rate us high, and go watch a ball game.